I'm Jacob Aegis, and I've got a little bit of a list going. I identify as pansexual in that when I'm looking at another person, I don't really look at gender when it comes to whether or not I'm romantically interested in them. I have depression and anxiety and a smidge of PTSD and all the things that come in with those. So that's what makes me me. That and, me as well. But, yeah. So, on my mum's side, everyone's just, the stereotypical Australian story of our family came on the convict ship, blah, 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 the normal stuff. I've got a bit of this and a bit of that in this European country and this European country. And then on dad's side, we're just completely Maltese. It's really funny. It's like 50% this and then 1% everything else. So I consider myself a half Maltese mutt. Well, like I was saying before, when I consider, what I'm attracted to and, if I could be attracted to a person, the idea of gender doesn't really play a part in that, I guess. So, like, for example, currently I'm with my girlfriend Maddie, and the fact that she's a woman doesn't factor into it at all. She's the person I love rather than the woman I love, if that makes sense.
Being pan.
Well, there's everybody's favorite joke that I'm attracted to crockery, but aside from that, it's a lot of the same backlash that bisexual people get. There's a lot less representation in the LGBTQI plus community. Oh, that's getting long. Where, because I guess it's often seen as being easier because you can just pretend to be straight, or if you are dating somebody that puts you in a heteronormative relationship, you could just be seen as straight. And there's the stereotypes of, if you're attracted to a potentially wider pool of people, you're more likely to cheat, which is incredibly infuriating, that idea that my sexuality could make me a bad person. And then, of course, the whole religion says it's bad, and obviously it's a choice for you if you're attracted to both. Why are you choosing to suck? That sort of stuff. Well, I didn't come out on purpose. When I was in high school, I started to wonder about my sexuality and who I was and stuff. And I found myself being attracted to guys as well as girls. And I didn't know that there was anything other than either being straight or gay. So I spoke to a friend and I was just really confused because there was this girl I had a crush on. I'd had a crush on her for a while. There was also this guy that I had a crush on. I didn't think that was allowed, it kind of blew my mind that was even, I thought something was wrong with me, honestly. I'm like, I might have talks with myself that, Jacob, are you gay or are you straight? You don't know. And a friend told me that bisexuality is a thing, and that kind of blew my mind a little bit, to be honest. So that, I worked out that was a thing, and fair enough. Go on my merry way, and at this time, I only found out I was pansexual as such later on in my life, as I looked more into terms and definitions and ways of defining yourself in a simple phrase, I guess. So, back to the outing story. So I ended up dating this guy in school. He was my first boyfriend. And obviously being in high school, I think it was year 9 that this happened, and I wasn't the most mentally stable at the time. My sister heard about me being dating a guy. She'd heard it from a friend of a friend, because rumors go around high schools, and her being worried about me and my mental health, thought it was a bad thing that people were talking about me and stuff, which honestly I didn't care about at the time, or now either, to be honest. So she told my mum, who, being a loving, caring mother, worries about me. But she takes it the step further in that she thinks that I'm making things harder for myself. That's what she told me, that I was making things harder for myself in life by dating this guy. And, what would you tell Nana and Nana, which are my dad's parents, and, all these things. And I didn't care about any of that. I had feelings for this guy and I wanted to be with him, but she made me break up with him, which was messy, and I really hurt him in that process. And from then on, it was just sort of something we didn't talk about. Later on in my life, I kind of tried to open up again to my mum about my sexuality and stuff, and she's grown as a person and come to, you know, accept me for who I am, and she's really changed her mind about these things. Like, these days I've told my dad, which is something I never thought I'd do. I've talked about these sorts of things with my mum, which I didn't think I'd be able to do. And like, even my sister now, she's since found out more about herself and currently has a girlfriend. So yeah, it's kind of all come full circle, and I feel like the biggest positive out of it, because all in all the situation sucked at the time, but because of it, it meant that things were a little bit easier for my sister, at least. Or at least I hope they were because of that. So at least there was some sort of positive that came out of all that. Okay, so I was in this festival that was on late last year, and afterwards there was an after party at the local gay bar. And I'd been there before a couple of times, but not really been there, if you know what I mean. And I don't know, I had a really fun night. It was really my biggest exposure to the gay community, because throughout my life I actually haven't met that many gay or lesbian or bisexual or whatever people. So a lot of my exposure to that community has been the same small group of people. And it was nice just to, you know, meet all these people and talk to them. And one of the best things, you know how sometimes you'll see two guys talking and someone will say something that's somehow effeminate and the other guy will say, "What are you, gay?" As a joke, I said to somebody who was telling some story about gay sex, I said, "What are you, gay?" And everybody just burst out laughing. It's like, "No, I'm straight," and put on these like faux masculine personas. It was hilarious. It was just this complete culture flip of the, "Oh, look at me, I'm a gay" thing that people do sometimes. And no, it was just a fascinating way to see how cultures develop and grow and how people interact with each other. And yeah, it was just, I felt included, and it was nice. Big time. I didn't realize I had darker skin. My mum would always tell me I was caramel colored, and that I was that color because when she was pregnant with me, she'd eat a lot of caramel koalas. It's a very cute little story. I love it. But growing up, it never really occurred to me that, you know, I actually had darker skin than other people. Like, I grew up in the first school I went to was Mary Immaculate in Quakers Hill, which was an area with a heavy Filipino population. So I really wasn't dark skinned there. But as soon as I moved to Kellyville, which was my second home, which is a different suburb in Sydney, I went to a different Catholic school where it was predominantly white people there. And all of a sudden, I was the brown kid. Which, yeah, it was surprising to me because I didn't realize I was, you know, different in any way. I just thought I was another kid. But here I was being told that I was brown, and that was somehow a negative thing. And you know, it wasn't that prevalent in the primary school. But the second I went to high school, I went to Dungog High for a year. That's when it really started to become a thing. There was lots of different people. I mean, even my friends, like, my nickname for the first year of high school was Mexico. Which, not even Mexican, which makes sense. Mexico. I'm apparently a country because of the color of my skin. And it's not that it was insulting, it's just that there's so much more to me than the color of my skin or where my dad's parents are from, you know? But that was all people were seeing of me, and it's not my fault you grew up in a place where everyone is white, you know? And then there was a couple of less than pleasant experiences as well, you know, people insulting me and occasionally even getting physical with me. Not solely on the race thing, but it was always mentioned, you know. And then at my subsequent two high schools, it was just sort of, it was always there, you know. It was something that would always be mentioned, even by my friends, as in jokes and passing. And I've just sort of come to accept that's a thing that happens, and it doesn't bother me now. But I don't feel like that I should have to accept that it's a thing that happens. For example, I joke around with my friends all the time. One of my closest friends calls me, which one is it? King Ramses II, because apparently to him I'm Egyptian. Which, you know, once again, wrong continent, but whatever. And he makes all these sand jokes and wonders why my organs are in jars and stuff. And it's like, alright, whatever you say, buddy. Have you seen an Egyptian person in your life? But yeah, this is one of my closest friends, and like I said, it doesn't really bother me, but also I shouldn't have to be used to it, you know? And it's sort of just in the background all the time. And it sort of bothers me because there have been times in my life where I've said, and I feel really bad for having ever said it, I'm not that brown. As if, you know, if I was browner, it would be warranted. It still doesn't make sense, you know? If that's a defense that works. Like, if I was darker, you could go for it. It's just dumb, you know?
So, growing up.
In retrospect, yes. At the time, it never even occurred to me. I mean, I've always been a very introspective person. I used to spend a lot of time sitting and thinking and sort of stewing in my own thoughts, which I guess as a child, you know, I'd be talking about these concepts of, you know, life and death and what's at the other side, and while we're in religion class, I'd be questioning whether or not God was real at a Catholic school, which they didn't really like that much, and these sorts of things. And that sort of, it's not that it was frowned upon that I was thinking these things, but some of the other kids thought it was weird, you know, and that sort of relegated me to a smaller group of friends. And then, you know, I wasn't very good at, I guess, blending in for most of my primary life, like primary school life. So yeah, that's because I was a lot more confident in primary school. But there's been a lot of times in my life where I haven't liked who I am for whatever reason. Yeah, there's been times when I wished I had whiter skin. There's been times where I've wanted a smaller nose, because, yeah, I've got a Maltese nose, which means I get made fun of about having a big nose. There's times in my life where every little thing that's gone wrong, I blame that on myself. And knowing that I can think about it and I can work things out that could have gone better, rather than that making things better, it makes it so much easier to blame myself. And so I've sort of spent a lot of time in my life picking apart everything that's gone wrong and then bringing it back in on myself and saying, this is your fault, you did this to you. You're an awful, horrible person that deserves these things. So does it take apart? Yes, but not in the way that I knew about it until I look back on my life.
Anxiety.
So when it all came to my mental health and the story of that, it started with depression, in that I was diagnosed as depressed and I used to self-harm and I was suicidal and all these things. So the anxiety that in retrospect I've had my entire life was sort of, I guess, pushed away. It wasn't until going for therapy later in my life, because I was struggling to deal with changes in my life, that it was even diagnosed. I was told, you're not just an anxious person, you actually have anxiety. I have this fear of failure to the point where I won't even try something, which has really helped me back in life, because in school I was much happier cruising by and not trying than having tried and then failed, because then I'd always give myself the excuse of, well, you didn't even try, so what's the problem, you know? So it makes things difficult. I wrote a play in a TAFE course that I did, and I'm very proud of it. It was an absurdist piece called Waiting that I put on in the Clegg Festival in Newcastle. And it was given praise by all these people, and everyone who was a part of it loved it, and everyone who watched it loved it, and it was all very positive. I've been meaning to rewrite it and extend it. I've been meaning to write more plays. But because that one was so successful, I've been so afraid of writing another one and it being not as good. and that has stopped me from writing anything else at all. So, I guess my anxiety is, a lot of it is just me being afraid of failing, to the point where I'll have panic attacks and won't be able to enter a lecture room at university, which is what happened when I was doing my psychology course, because I was just so scared of getting it wrong, and of stuffing up and disappointing everyone, including myself. It comes back to that thing where I blame myself for things. So, yeah, that's how anxiety's affected my life. Well, when it comes to things that cause it, it can be anything. It can be washing the dishes, or, going to a shopping center. It just, all of a sudden it'll feel like it's too much, or that I'm gonna do something wrong, or that something's gonna happen that shouldn't happen. And then I think about it, and before I know it, I'm curled up in a ball somewhere, trying to hide from even going into the kitchen where the dishes are. But things that help me cope with it are, of course, my friends and family and my girlfriend, the people that are there in my life. Just having them around me and encouraging me. These people that I love, they give me this strength to sort of push past it. I know it's a stereotype, I'm stronger for the people around me. But it's true. Because, Maddie, for example, my girlfriend, she will work through something with me. If I'm having a panic attack, she'll talk it through with me. Or if I'm with my family, everything just seems so much more normal, and there's just so much less pressure than if I'm just trying to do it on my own. So people are what help me get through these things, which is funny because when I'm feeling like this, one of my main impulses is to isolate myself. It's a bit of a double-edged blade there, but when I can seek help, just automatically it's better. Rather than a favorite one, it's playing the latest one that I've been playing, so I can forget what I'm worrying about. I'll dive headfirst into a video game so that I can get lost in that world, or if it's an online game, so I can talk to my friends about something completely unrelated, so I can just forget that there was something I was worried about in the first place. So I can get frustrated at not being good enough at the game, or so I can celebrate a victory rather than focusing on this other thing that was worrying me in the first place. I've tried lots of different things. I've had lots of different sorts of hobbies and stuff in my life. I've tried archery. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought. I've tried doing lots of different things. I've tried archery. I've tried joining clubs. I've tried doing martial arts. So, tried lots and lots of different things, and I always come back to video games. I guess because of the sense of control I have over everything involved in it. It sort of puts you in this position of power where the anxiety isn't there because you can fix any problem that's there. That's the nature of video game. You've got something you need to do, and you can do it, and you do it, and everything's good and happy, and there you go. And because I'm so busy focusing on, what buttons to press when, how this works with this, I don't have time to worry about whatever it was that was making me anxious. But the problem is I can use it as too much of a crutch, to the point where I'll procrastinate from getting the things done that I'm anxious about. And so then when I'm done playing, I'm anxious because I've wasted so much time, and it's just it can become a loop if I depend on it too much. But for the most part in my life, I've actually been really positively received for my sexuality. Like, I haven't had that much negative backlash for it, and, despite my parents being worried that's something I'd be bullied about and stuff if I came out, it's really something that really people didn't care about, which is nice. They shouldn't. But there's just this one thing that I always remember, is that my ex-girlfriend, while I was dating her, she used to call me her gay boyfriend. and she'd call me things like a faggot, and she'd call me gay and stuff, and it really got to me because I would tell her I didn't want her to do that. I'm not your gay boyfriend, I'm your boyfriend, and I'm not a faggot. But no, we're not taking that word back. I don't like being called that. But she'd continue to say it anyway, and it hurt me, not only that I didn't want her to say it and I made it clear, but that's how she saw me. She didn't just see me as Jacob. I was her gay boyfriend, Jacob. And I'm not the most masculine person in the world. It's no secret. But I'm also not some stereotype or, I don't fit in a box like that. I'm a person. And just, I know, it hurt me to hear somebody that I cared so much about talking about me in that way. And even today, when I have a pretty thick skin, it takes a lot to hurt my feelings, but if somebody goes on and on and on with homophobic slurs or racial slurs or anything like that, even if it's not directed at me, it frustrates me because there's just no need for it. It's not a thing that people need to do. So, when I was in year 8, this is when I was in my 6th and final school of my life, because I moved around a few times. I started self-harming. The first time I ever did it, I was on a school bus headed home, and I was scratching at my hand. I still got the scar here. I was just doing that. I just kept going and going. I didn't even know why I was doing it. In retrospect, it was not that I was sad as much as that I wanted to feel something. I felt hopeless and useless and worthless, but that didn't make me sad because I was so used to feeling those things about myself. So I wanted to feel something, anything else, as I settled for just sitting there and doing that. And of course, I got home with this mark on my hand. I just make up some story or another to hide it, and that's when it all started. And this pattern kind of continued of me, making up stories and sort of hiding what I was doing from my family and friends, because I didn't want to admit that there was something wrong with me. I started just like that in the one spot, and then I sort of started taking razor blades out of my sister's razors that she'd used to shave her legs because I didn't have facial hair yet. And that's when I started cutting my arms and my legs, and that's when it got harder to hide, obviously. So I started wearing jackets on 40-degree days and things like that. And eventually, a friend of mine in school was very worried about me. And while she was seeing the school counselor, she talked about me. And obviously, duty of care, this counselor then had to reach out to me. And then once I spoke to her, instantly called my parents. I was in hospital that night because they had to diagnose me and start the process of recovery and diagnosis and finding different methods and strategies to deal with it rather than it ending in any worst case scenario. It's not where it stopped though, because this was all very loud and busy and traumatic, and I'd gotten so used to cutting myself that it was hard to stop. It became a bit of an addiction for me, to the point where I'd actually get withdrawals from not doing it, where my arms would twitch and I would feel this pain in the spot where I wanted to cut, and I knew that pain would go away if I did it. So then it became this game of cat and mouse of me wanting to hurt myself and trying to hide it from the people I cared about and loved the most. And just like, Jacob, why are you wearing a long sleeve shirt? Show me your arms, and that sort of stuff. And it became this whole thing of trust and whether or not people could trust me, because there's this balance between loving somebody but also trying to trust them enough to do the right thing, but also knowing that they probably won't. And I can only imagine what that was like for my mum. I know she lost a lot of sleep after all that. And I only got worse after that. I cut more and deeper, and I only got the scars left of the deeper cuts because all the other ones faded away, thankfully. But that's when I made the first attempt in my life. I made plans with somebody else who was also similarly minded, but before we could go through with these plans, I can't remember exactly how, but it was found out, and the whole school counsellor, talking to parents, all that stuff happens again. Yeah, there was crying and parents telling you they loved you and begging you not to do these things and why didn't you talk to us, and it's so hard to explain to a parent that it's not that you didn't think you could talk to them, but in this specific scenario in your life where everything was self-contained, it just hadn't occurred to you to, because you were so focused on yourself and your own feelings and trying to, deal with this thing inside of you, and you didn't even know what it was, that you couldn't talk to them about it because you didn't want to hurt them. And it was more than one time in my life where I tried to kill myself. Either I'd attempt to hang myself and then stop and wake up my parents, and they'd have to take the belts off the fan, the ceiling fan that I'd hung them from, or a friend would talk me down from a high place, or any number of things like that. And through a combination of counselling and antidepressants and time being the most important factor, I've learned to manage my emotions a lot better. I can't say it's gone because it's not. I'm in a much better place than I used to be, that's for sure. I mean, I'm 21 now. It all started in year 8, for God's sake. I mean, it doesn't just go away. It's something that's, I think will always be there. It'll be something I'll always have to deal with. But it's something I'm also getting better at dealing with. I have this one specific memory before I even started self-harming where I suspected I might have depression. And I tried to suggest the idea to my mum in a joking way, like offhanded sort of thing. And she laughed it off because, that's how I was treating it. And she told me, no, you don't have depression, you're too happy. And it was just sort of like this inner voice like screaming, no, this is me asking you for help, Mum. And I actually haven't told her that story because I've always been scared she'd blame herself for that, but I was being way too closed about it for her to possibly pick up on it. I mean, one time I remember leaving my iPod Touch unlocked with a online depression test, hoping that she'd pick it up and see it. Just little cries for help like that. But yeah, there's I know it's different for everybody, and not all people with depression self-harm, and not all people with depression attempt suicide or anything like that. It's a unique beast for everybody that's involved, but that's how it all sort of went for me. And I haven't self-harmed in 3 years, I think, a bit longer than that. I don't really keep track because I don't want to be aware of it, it's sort of something I'm more trying to forget about than anything else. And I haven't made any sort of attempt on my life or anything in much longer than that. But it's still there. Yeah, it's kind of just a part of who I am now, I guess. Well, I mean, obviously there's always the whole sympathy thing, but the people in my life that do know that I've attempted to kill myself in my past are people that I already know quite well, So when it was all very fresh and raw, I'm sure people were treading on eggshells, but I wouldn't have noticed because I was so self-centered at the time, I was focusing on myself, which is a good and a bad thing in a lot of different ways. It's what I needed to do to get better as such, but also it means that I wasn't aware of really what was going on around me. And now that, I'm quite a bit past all of that, it's not really something I'm just gonna tell a random stranger, So it's not really something I'm aware of as to how it's changed people. I haven't had anybody, treat me completely differently after finding out or anything. And I mean, for example, when I first told you, it didn't even surprise you because I'd already told you other parts of my past, and I'm sure you'd already put the pieces together and assumed it had at least happened once before. Because, you have two brain cells rubbed together at least. I know you do. My point is, the reason it hasn't really changed how people treat me is because the people I tell are people that already treat me well, I guess, I'm not going to tell somebody as they're beating me up or anything. I wish I had an exciting answer for that question because there isn't really anything. I mean, I'm an open book when it comes to these sorts of things. If somebody asks me a question, I'll just answer it, and honestly. And if somebody tries to insult me, like I said before, I've got a thick skin, I'll probably laugh it off or make a joke out of it. I don't really care about these sorts of things. Like, I was driving home from work about 6 months ago, and a guy winds down his window to speed past me and scream, "Go back to your country." All I can think of is, okay, I'm here. Sure, that guy's a racist douchebag, but I don't really care. I more feel sorry for him that he's at a point in his life where he needs to scream slurs at strangers that could be in any life circumstance for all he knows. I mean, I like the positive things that come out of it. For example, this thing happened at work once. I work in before and after school care, so I work with children, obviously, and children, very innocent. They do things without thinking because they're kids. And we're playing this game called Color Switch, in which I call out a color, and all the kids have to run in the playground, touch something of that color, and then they're safe, and I have to count down from 3, and they have to touch it. So, I'll call out blue, and they'll touch something blue, and touch out green, they'll touch something green. I shout out brown, they all run to a tree, except for this one kid who runs up and puts his hand on my face. And he thought nothing of it, it was just, oh, a brown thing, I'll touch it. And he didn't know why I burst out laughing. Because that was so adorable and innocent. Because it wasn't meant in an insulting way, it's just that my skin is a light brown color. So he was touching a brown thing, If it's okay to do things like that, then racism doesn't exist, That's something my mum told me. Is in kindergarten, I tried to explain, I was describing 2 of my friends to her. I was trying to explain to her which friend was Ivan. I think that was his name. That was a long time ago. And I was describing, the one with the skin that's a little bit darker than this guy's skin, a bit lighter than that guy's skin. And she said to me that was, like, she realized that when things like that are perfectly okay to say, racism doesn't exist. Because I wasn't insulting him, I wasn't saying he's better or worse because of that. I was just saying that, as a fact, the tone of his skin was that tone. He had that much melanin. It's just a thing, So, I like to look at the positive stories like that can show that there's more than enough potential for change in the world. And those stories are few and far between, admittedly, but it's sort of what you look for in life, I guess. It's so stupid. So just the idea of a postal vote, something's easily tampered with, something that is already being recorded as being tampered with, it's not legally binding if it goes through as a yes, so it's pointless in the end. It's an opinion poll done by the government, wasting a stupid amount of money for something that in the end will be completely irrelevant to give people basic human rights. It's so dumb. It'd be like, should women be able to vote? We'll do a plebiscite and see what everyone thinks. If everyone says yes, we'll think about doing it. Yeah, that's a good idea. Should black people be slaves? Let's do a postal vote, find out. Genius. Got it. Should we murder everybody? Postal vote. That'll do it. There's your answer. I saw a couple of yeses in there, I guess we're gonna do it. You know, it's a waste of money, it's a waste of time, it's a waste of resources, and in the end, it's asking everybody in the country whether or not they think a group of people that they may or may not be involved with should be allowed to have the right that everyone else already has. It's just, there's so many different analogies and comparisons you can make, but in the end it's stupid. It's laughable and stupid and childish that this could even happen, and that it hasn't happened yet, that we're just allowed to. Like, if I were to break up with my girlfriend for some strange reason that I don't foresee, and I end up with a man, I should be able to marry that man. If I end up with a non-binary gendered person, I should be able to marry them, if I so choose. I don't even believe in the institution of marriage as such. I don't want to be married. But I deserve the right to make that choice. It shouldn't be made for me that I can only make that choice if I choose to be with a woman, or if the person that I happen to love is a woman. Like I was saying, I'm a person. We're all just people. And people want to love people, and people want to be with people, and people want to be in communities of people, because we're herd animals. It's in our nature. And it's seen throughout all of nature of animals with different sexualities all across the world. And they're not judged by the other animals because they don't care. And why should we? I couldn't care less what you're doing as long as it's not hurting anyone. If it's two consenting adults, then I don't care what they do in their bedroom. If it's two consenting adults, I don't care what they do at the altar. You know, as long as it's not spray painting it or burning it or something like that. My general philosophy in life is if you're not hurting anyone, go for it. As long as everybody's happy, then it sounds so stupid and simplistic, but if we could just let everyone be happy, then why should we stop them from being happy? And sure, it's not going to cause world peace or end world hunger or stop global warming to let gay people get married, but it will make a couple of people's lives better, and so why don't we just do it? It'll boost various what was I trying to say? Like for example, the marriage business will have a massive boom as all these gay people that were waiting to be able to get married but didn't want to have to go overseas to do it get married all at the same time. That'll start to decline, but all of a sudden they've got a much larger client base. There's bakeries that sell wedding cakes. There's those cheap plastic shops that sell all the stupid stuff that you have at Bucks nights and Hens nights and all that stuff. Like, it'd be good for business even if you want to look at money, which shouldn't really take part in love. But my point is, I don't see any negatives to outweigh the positives, other than this archaic idea of the institution of marriage, which doesn't exist anymore. There's divorces, there's people that get married for political reasons throughout history. There are people who get married because of money. There are people who get married to hurt other people. I can't remember which comedian it was who said that gay people should be allowed to get married. I think it was Chris Rock, who said gay people should be allowed to get married so that they can be disappointed too. And I think he said that in like 2009 or something like that. I don't see any reason why we shouldn't allow gay marriage, and I think that putting it to a postal vote of all things is just stupid. Okay, so driving was always the thing that I needed to be able to do because I lived in Dungog. It was 45 minutes to the nearest anything. And, I wasn't going to ride a bike that far or hop on a horse, which I'm allergic to, or something like that. So I had to learn to drive. I drove the car every morning because Mum worked in Maitland. So every morning I was going to school, we'd put the L's on and I'd drive. I got my hours up really quickly. I had a driving teacher who was lovely, and she was really friendly to me, really helped me through. I was originally a very nervous driver. And I got my hours up quickly and I got my P's relatively quickly. And that was fine. I had a job at a Hungry Jack's at Newcastle Airport, which is now closed, probably because I don't work there anymore, I think. I was the greatest 4-week employee they ever had. You know, I enjoyed the freedom of being able to drive, and I even started to enjoy the feeling of driving, which I still really enjoy today, actually. I like going on a long nighttime drive on my own while it's raining. I think it's one of the most peaceful things you can do. But, I'm an insomniac. I have struggled with sleep since I was born. My mum says I was never a restful sleeper, even when I was a baby. And so, from this, I'm very often very tired. For example, I literally didn't sleep last night. Wasn't a cause to it, I just didn't. So I just stayed up and went to work this morning, and now I'm doing this. So, being new to driving, and I wasn't aware of exactly how fatiguing it could be. So, a week after having my red peas and having my own little red car to drive around that I could call my own, I was driving to my job at Hungry Jack's, which I was still pretty new to, from Dungog to Newcastle Airport. I was heading through Seaham on the long winding country roads when I had a microsleep. Well, we think that's what happened, because my memory of the events surrounding the car crash are not completely clear. I hadn't been drinking or anything. I was only 17 at the time. I didn't drink then. And I wasn't on anything. Is that a surprised look I saw, Beth?
Continue.
That's right, I didn't touch alcohol until I was 17 and a half. It was actually after the car crash that I first drank. So, you know, going on this long country road, I had a microsleep behind the wheel, presumably. Woke up and found myself in somebody's driveway in a patch of gravel. I was going about 80 kilometers an hour. So I swerved to not hit the fence post, skidded on the gravel, went into a ditch and went slightly airborne, and hit a telegraph pole wrapping the car around it, and basically halving its size. I can give you a picture for the video if you'd like. I've still got it. I've been told by everybody who's seen the picture, by everybody who was there on the site at the time, everybody involved in any way, shape or form, that by all accounts I shouldn't have gotten out of that car. I'm stupidly lucky to be alive. So basically, what's going through my head is I'm skidding towards this pole right before I shut my eyes before the impact. This bang that I can still hear. It's shit. My car's gonna get scratched. And then everything stops, and you know this stereotype of everything went quiet. Not true at all. All I could hear blaring in my ears was my horn, which was just stuck on from the car bending in on itself, and the engine just revving. The wheels, both the front and back wheels, were not touching, but my foot was stuck down on the accelerator by the steering wheel, which had come down and broken my left femur. So the accelerator was stuck down, which was terrifying. So I'm coming to, there's this dusty taste and smell in the air. And I don't know that I'm hurt. I don't know if it was the shock or just my way of coping with what was happening, but I didn't know that I was in pain. I didn't know that I was hurt. I just thought that because of the position the steering wheel was in, pinning my leg, was why I couldn't move it. So I'm sat there for what felt like an eternity. It was probably about 5 minutes on my own in this car in a ditch next to a telegraph pole. My hands are bleeding. I've still got the scars from the surgery and stuff because I broke both my hands, both my wrists, this hand in several places. I needed surgery on my hand and my leg to reset the bones. I've still got the rods in my hand. The leg one had to be removed for other reasons. My hand, this right hand actually broke because it went through the window, shattering the glass with the impact. And on the passenger seat of the car, while this horn's blaring and the engine's revving, there's my phone just sitting there on the passenger seat. It's fallen down onto the floor, but there's not a scratch on it. And it's just playing this song, It's a cover of Pursuit of Happiness by Cloud Control. And that's still one of my favorite songs to this day, because I feel like that song stopped me from going insane while I waited for people to help me. But somehow, despite having this 80-kilometer collision, not only had I survived, but my phone was without a scratch, sitting there on the passenger seat, playing this really calming and lovely song with beautiful harmonies that I'd recently illegally downloaded on YouTube with one of those audio grabbing websites that we've all used. And so I'm there in the car, and then I hear another car pull up, and this man frantically hops out and like tries to awkwardly peer in through the window to see if there's, somebody alive. He sees me there, and I just scream, just scream, fuck, long and drawn out, as I realize exactly what situation I'm in. And he says, I'm gonna get help, and gets on his phone and walks back to his car, away from mine, because the engine's revving, it's dangerous, he's scared, obviously. And while this is happening, a trauma nurse from Clarencetown, which is only about 15 minutes down the road from where I'd come from, happens to be headed to work, going along the same road I was going down. I'm still friends with her on Facebook, actually. She saw what had happened, got out of her car, put her car in a position to let other traffic know what was going on, to go around, got in the passenger side, stabilized me, checked on me, spoke to me, calmed me down, and then sat with me throughout the entire process for however long it was, and I have no idea how long it was, right up until the ambulances and the fire brigade came. And Tamara, the nurse that saved my life that day, she's an amazing person for doing that. There was so many people responsible for me being alive that day. I was saved by the people, the ambulances that came, the helicopter that came to pick me up and take me to the John Hunter Hospital, the fire brigade that had to use the jaw of life to cut me out of the car. All those people saved my life, but Tamara specifically is the one that stopped me from going insane, And so they gave me ketamine. I was one of the first people in Australia to be given ketamine as a, painkiller. And it was the weirdest experience, because my senses were mixed up. I could see sound, and it felt both like hours and only a couple of minutes, and I was waking up in a hospital bed. So I was in a wheelchair for quite a while, with a broken leg and 2 broken wrists. I couldn't really use crutches, and I was only actually in hospital for a little over a week, I think, because I hated it in there. I didn't like being stuck in the bed. I didn't like the smell. I didn't like the people around me. It was making me so sad and uncomfortable that every single day I was pushing to get let out early, which just put a lot of more work on my mum, I think, who then took care of me and would help me get into the shower and stuff, because I'd have one of those plastic seats in the shower to sit on, and I'd do physiotherapy, and I'd have stitches removed, and then I'd have rods removed from my leg, and then all this massive, many-month-long process that doesn't ever feel like it's going to end. Like, my leg still hurts if I overuse it, or if I sit in a weird position, or if I sleep in a weird, or if the weather changes unexpectedly. And, after all that, all I can think is I'm lucky to be alive, which I am. There are religious people telling me that God saved me, or non-religious people just saying that I'm stupidly lucky. And I don't really believe in God, but I don't know what. I'm just lucky to be here, I guess. But from all that, then there was the nightmares and the flashbacks, and remembering just tiny little extra seconds of what was going on. And that's actually the most painful and difficult part about it all, I think, is that everything can be okay, and I can be driving along and enjoying myself because I love driving, and then all of a sudden I'll picture myself swerving and hitting a pole, or I'll imagine a car doing something stupid and slamming into me, or I'll wake up screaming in the night from this dream that I've had of the car crash, or of another car crash, or of other people getting hurt. Because one of my biggest fears and one of my biggest reliefs about my car crash is the fact that I was the only person that got hurt. You know, there was no collision, there was no other people involved. And I don't think I could have forgiven myself if anyone else had been involved. So even though I'm so happy no one else was, it's something I have nightmares about, and I'm constantly scared of when I'm driving, and you know, I'll just get these little flashes in my head talking and thinking about it, where it's just, it's right there, you know, and I know that, you know, a car's not coming for me, or that everything's fine on the road, or that it was just a dream, but it feels so real, and you just need to take a moment. It's honestly something I should have sought help for. You know, I should have gotten therapy for it. I chose not to because I was so scared of going back to therapy after all the depression and everything. I'm still considering actually seeing somebody about it. But, you know, there's always like the stereotypes on TV of someone having flashbacks, or of having nightmares of something that's happened to them, but when it actually happens, it's so different to how you expect it to be, because it still hurts when you have those flashbacks or those dreams. It's like it's all happening again, and that can be really scary. But also, postal votes are dumb. It's affected me in some ways. It's affected me a lot. In other ways, it's affected me not at all. Some people were surprised to hear that I was driving as soon as I could walk. But that's because I lived in Dungog. You know, I couldn't not drive because I'd be stuck. And being stuck to me, after being stuck in a wheelchair and having to depend on other people for help, and being so stubborn and, you know, hurting myself in the process of not letting people help me and stuff, I was much happier to have the freedom of driving. It outweighed that fear of driving, because that freedom meant so much to me. So it's massively affected my life in that, you know, it's something I talk about and I bring up without even meaning to, and I have the dreams and the nightmares and the thoughts and the flashbacks, and, you know, I can't run as fast as I could, and exercise hurts, so I avoid it even more than I used to. And, you know, my wrists both hurt because they were both broken, and I can't bend this finger all the way down because of all the scars along it, and that sort of thing. And so they've got all these constant reminders of this car crash, and it's not just the physical, but because of the, you know, this constant weight on my mind from, you know, having PTSD. I couldn't forget about it if I tried to. And yet, I let myself forget about it enough for it to be a surprise every time I do have a flashback or something. And I think it sort of, it holds me back in that I am sort of just living in fear. I'm not doing things differently because of the fear, but the fear is there, and I need to find a way to deal with that. The list.
The list. I can go through the list.
No, it's like I was saying before, my belief is that life is about enjoying it without it being at the expense of anybody else. You try to find your happiness while you're here. You try to find some sort of fulfillment or purpose, be that love or a successful career or something. And things like depression and PTSD and stuff, they can sort of hold you back from achieving that happiness. Like, it's somebody insulting you because of your sexuality or your race, that can hold you back from reaching that happiness, but you're still alive. And being still alive means you can still be in that pursuit of happiness. You don't need to stop. There isn't, you know, and there's no rules about, you know, you have to stop trying to be happy because this has happened to you. You know, I joke about these things with my friends. I make really dumb edgy suicide jokes with my friends I play video games with. I joke around with my friends about my skin color and these sorts of things, because if I'm going to enjoy life, then why not turn the negative around as well? So I'll make car crash jokes. And my friends, some of them do feel comfortable enough to do that with me. Because if it's the thing that's happened to me, it's the thing that's going to hurt me, I'm at least going to get some happiness out of it as well. So my advice to anybody who's going through any of these things is to try to find that silver lining, to try to find a way to joke about it, or to laugh about it, or to smile in the face of it. Because you're still alive, and that means you haven't lost yet. You're still going, you've still got a chance, and you don't need to give up. Motivation.